The Buddha's answer, "What are you living for?" An eternal question. Have you ever paused for a moment and truly asked yourself, what am I really living for? This is not just a passing thought. It is one of the most profound and timeless questions that has haunted humanity for centuries. It emerges in moments of suffering, loss, or deep uncertainty. It lingers in the quiet spaces of our minds when we realize that the pursuit of wealth, social status, or fleeting pleasures often leaves us feeling unfulfilled. More than 2.500 years ago, the Buddha himself confronted this very question and offered answers that go beyond material success or worldly achievements. His teachings do not point towards external gratification but rather toward a deeper understanding of suffering and the path to ultimate liberation. In this discussion, we will explore the Buddha's wisdom through the Four Noble Truths, uncover the true nature of suffering, and reflect on the power of letting go. We will enrich these ancient teachings with personal insights, modern perspectives, and compelling stories, shedding new light on the Buddha's path while challenging you to rethink your own purpose in life. Are you ready to dive into the depths of this question and discover what truly matters? Chapter 1. Understanding the Four Noble Truths, A Monk's Awakening. To truly see the world as it is, one must grasp the essence of the Four Noble Truths. But according to the Buddha, simply knowing them on a theoretical level is not enough. One must realize them through deep, personal insight. Many people accumulate knowledge, read scriptures, chant mantras, but their hearts remain unchanged. A true monk, or any sincere seeker of truth, is not just someone who understands these truths intellectually but someone who internalizes them and transforms their way of being. 1. The first noble truth. Dukkha. Life is unsatisfactory. Life, by its very nature, is unsatisfactory. From birth to old age, sickness, and ultimately death, suffering touches every aspect of existence. Even the happiest moments are impermanent, and attachment to them leads to inevitable pain. Example. Imagine a child receiving a beautiful toy. At first, the child is overjoyed, but over time, the toy breaks or loses its novelty. The same principle applies to everything we hold dear: relationships, success, health. The moment we cling to anything, we set ourselves up for suffering. 2. The second noble truth. Samudaya. The cause of suffering is attachment. We suffer because of our cravings and attachments. We cling to possessions, relationships, and identities, believing they define us. We chase after pleasure and resist pain, creating a never-ending cycle of suffering. Example. Think of someone who constantly seeks validation on social media. Each like or comment gives a temporary sense of happiness, but the moment engagement drops, anxiety and self-doubt arise. The same attachment that once brought pleasure now becomes a source of suffering. 3. The third noble truth. Nirodha. Liberation is possible. The good news is that suffering can end. By letting go of attachment and illusions, one can find true peace and freedom. Liberation does not mean renouncing life, but rather seeing through the illusions that keep us trapped. Personal reflection. When I first encountered this truth, I questioned whether it was really possible. Can a person truly let go of desires? But over time, I realized it's not about rejecting life, it's about engaging with it without clinging. When we stop chasing, we start living. 4. The fourth noble truth. Magga. The path to liberation. The way out of suffering is through the Eightfold Path: right understanding, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. These principles offer not just a way to live, but a way to see life differently. Example. Imagine two people facing the same difficult situation, losing a job. One panics, feeling like their life is falling apart. The other sees it as an opportunity for growth, a chance to start something new. The difference lies in perception, not the event itself. The Eightfold Path helps us cultivate this wisdom. Why this matters? Many people go through life without ever facing these truths. They distract themselves with work, entertainment, or fleeting pleasures, hoping to escape discomfort, but ignoring reality does not make it disappear. Only by confronting reality can we break free from suffering's cycle. The Four Noble Truths are not just teachings. They are a mirror reflecting our deepest struggles and a guide to transforming our existence. So, ask yourself, am I truly living? Or am I just running away from reality? Chapter 2. Suffering is inevitable. Imagine a young man named Daniel. He works tirelessly at a prestigious company, climbing the corporate ladder and accumulating wealth, recognition, and success. On the surface, he appears to have everything one could desire: money, influence, and the admiration of his peers. Yet, despite all of this, a quiet, unshakable emptiness lingers within him, a void he cannot explain. One day, Daniel receives a phone call that shatters his carefully constructed world. His mother has been diagnosed with a terminal illness. In that moment, all the wealth he has accumulated, all the prestige he has worked so hard for, becomes meaningless. No amount of money can buy time. No status can shield him from the anguish of losing a loved one. The pain is inescapable, a universal truth. Daniel's journey is a reflection of the Buddha's teachings. Suffering is not exclusive to the unfortunate, it touches everyone, regardless of wealth, power, or privilege. It is an inescapable aspect of the human experience. Example: even the most powerful kings, the wealthiest entrepreneurs, and the most brilliant minds in history have faced sickness, loss, and death. No one has ever been able to escape suffering simply through material success. Steve Jobs, despite his genius and fortune, could not prevent his own mortality. Princes and emperors have mourned the deaths of their loved ones just like ordinary people. When we recognize suffering as an inherent part of life, we begin to see the world as the Buddha saw it, not as a place to seek permanent happiness, but as a realm of impermanence, where joy and sorrow, gain and loss, are woven together. Why this matters? Many people spend their lives avoiding this truth. They distract themselves with work, entertainment, or endless pursuits of pleasure. But sooner or later, suffering finds them, through illness, heartbreak, failure, or death. The more we resist this truth, the more painful it becomes. But what if, instead of running from suffering, we faced it? What if we accepted it as a natural part of life? The Buddha did not teach us to eliminate suffering entirely, because that is impossible. Instead, he showed us how to understand it, how to respond to it, and ultimately, how to transcend it. So, ask yourself, am I living in denial of suffering? Or am I learning to embrace it with wisdom? Chapter 3. The futility of chasing status and success. In today's world, we are taught that happiness comes from external achievements. We chase careers, relationships, houses, cars, and social recognition, believing that these things will finally make us feel complete. But what if all of these pursuits are merely different forms of suffering in disguise? The Buddha rejected the illusion that material success leads to lasting happiness. He saw through the endless cycle of craving and dissatisfaction. Those who constantly seek wealth, power, or fame are not truly finding fulfillment. They are merely inviting more suffering under a different name. The illusion of success. Think about it. Have you ever felt excited about buying a brand new phone, a luxury item, or a dream car? At first, there is a rush of excitement. Your mind tells you that you've finally gotten what you wanted. But then, time passes, a newer model is released, trends change, and suddenly, what once brought you joy now feels outdated. The same desire that once thrilled you now makes you restless and dissatisfied. The cycle begins again. This applies not just to material possessions but to all external achievements. A promotion at work feels exhilarating, but soon enough, you start aiming for the next one. You enter a relationship hoping it will make you feel whole. But before long, the imperfections appear, and new desires arise. No matter how much we achieve, it is never enough. A modern example. Consider the story of a businessman named Richard. From a young age, he was taught that success meant financial wealth. He worked tirelessly, building an empire, earning millions, and gaining the admiration of others. But every time he reached a new milestone, he found himself feeling empty. Maybe I just need to work harder, he thought, so he pushed himself further, making more money, buying more luxury items, earning more prestige. Yet, despite having everything he once dreamed of, Richard felt trapped. His relationships were shallow, his mind was restless, and he couldn't escape the nagging feeling that something was missing. He was successful, but not truly happy. The Buddha's simple answer. One of the Buddha's closest disciples, Ananda, once asked, "Master, what is the secret to happiness?" The Buddha responded with just 2 words, let go. This teaching is both profound and challenging. We are conditioned to believe that holding on to success, relationships, status, is what brings us security. But the truth is, the tighter we cling, the more we suffer. Why this matters? If we take an honest look at our own lives, we will see this pattern everywhere. We constantly tell ourselves, if I just get this promotion, I'll be happy. If I find the right partner, my life will feel complete. If I make more money, I'll finally feel secure. But the moment we achieve these things, our minds immediately move to the next goal, the next craving. The cycle is endless, and no amount of external success can permanently satisfy us. True peace does not come from acquiring more. It comes from realizing that we never truly needed those things in the first place. The Buddha's wisdom reminds us that happiness is not found in holding on, but in letting go. So, ask yourself, what am I clinging to? And is it truly making me happy? Chapter 4. The Story of Letting Go. Once upon a time, there was a wealthy merchant named Ravi. He had everything a person could desire: gold, land, servants, and an empire of wealth. Yet, despite his fortune, Ravi was never at peace. His mind was consumed by worry. Every night, he lay awake, fearing that thieves would steal his treasures, that his business would collapse, or that his wealth would one day disappear. One day, during his travels, Ravi met a wandering monk meditating beneath a tree. Intrigued by the monk's serene presence, he approached and asked, "Master, how can I find peace? I have everything I ever wanted, yet my heart is restless." The monk smiled and replied, "True wealth does not come from possession, but from freedom." Ravi pondered these words but did not fully understand them. However, something about the monk's presence stayed with him. That night, he decided to put the wisdom to the test. He gave away half of his fortune to the poor, expecting to feel regret or sadness. But instead of loss, he felt something entirely unexpected: lightness, freedom, and deep joy. For the first time in his life, he was no longer a prisoner of his own wealth. The burden of attachment. Ravi's suffering had never come from a lack of wealth, it had come from his attachment to it. The more he had, the more he feared losing it. This is a paradox many of us experience. We chase success, thinking it will bring us security. Yet the more we acquire, the more we worry about protecting it. Example: imagine carrying a heavy bag filled with gold. At first, it seems valuable, but as you walk, the weight begins to exhaust you. The longer you hold onto it, the more painful it becomes. Then, someone tells you, "You don't need to carry this." If you dare to let it go, you suddenly feel lighter, as if you've been freed from an invisible prison. This is exactly what happened to Ravi. His suffering had never been about wealth itself, but about his attachment to it. A modern reflection: many of us live like Ravi. We accumulate wealth, possessions, or status, believing that they define our worth. We cling to jobs we hate, relationships that no longer serve us, or social validation that only brings temporary happiness. But the tighter we grip, the more we suffer. Have you ever noticed how freeing it feels to declutter your home? To finally let go of that toxic relationship? To quit a job that drains you? The act of letting go, whether of material things, expectations, or past hurts, creates space for something greater: peace, freedom, and true happiness. The Buddha's wisdom on letting go. The Buddha often used the analogy of a clenched fist and an open palm. When we cling to something tightly, our hand is tense, our body is strained, but the moment we open our hand and let go, we experience relief. Ravi's story teaches us a profound lesson. Happiness does not come from having more, it comes from needing less. True freedom is not found in possessions, but in detachment from them. So, ask yourself, what am I holding on to that is actually holding me back? Chapter 5. The Body, a House of Suffering. The Buddha was not just a philosopher, he was a realist. He spoke about the human body in a way that many might find uncomfortable. Yet no one can deny its truth. Our bodies, no matter how strong, beautiful, or well-maintained, are ultimately fragile. They are subject to sickness, aging, and, inevitably, death. No matter how much time and effort we devote to keeping them in perfect condition, through diet, exercise, or cosmetic enhancements, the process of decay marches on, unstoppable. Even modern medicine, with all its technological advancements, has not found a way to halt this inevitable decline. We can delay aging, we can treat illnesses, but we cannot escape the fundamental truth. This body is temporary. The illusion of control. Think of a person who dedicates their entire life to preserving their youth. They invest in the latest skincare, the most rigorous fitness routines, and the most expensive medical treatments. For a time, they may succeed in maintaining the appearance of vitality. But can they stop a single gray hair from appearing? Can they prevent their skin from eventually wrinkling? Can they escape the fatigue that comes with age? A wise person does not deny this truth but instead reflects on it deeply. When we realize that the body is not our permanent possession but merely a temporary vessel, we begin to develop a sense of detachment, of personal reflection. For many years, I believed that if I ate the right foods, exercised regularly, and avoided harmful habits, I could control my body's health indefinitely. But then, one day, I fell sick, unexpectedly and without warning. In that moment, I understood something profound. My body does not belong to me in the way I once thought. It functions on its own terms. No matter how much I try to maintain it, it will follow its own course, independent of my desires. This realization was not depressing, it was liberating. I no longer saw my body as something to be obsessed over or controlled, but rather as a temporary companion on my journey. The Buddha's wisdom on the body. The Buddha compared the human body to a borrowed house, something we live in for a while, but which will eventually crumble. He encouraged his followers to care for their bodies without attachment, knowing that they are impermanent. This does not mean neglecting health or abandoning self-care. It means recognizing that no matter how much we nurture the body, it is not who we truly are. By understanding this, we free ourselves from unnecessary suffering. Why this matters? Many people fear aging, sickness, and death because they believe their identity is tied to their physical form. But what if we shifted our perspective? What if, instead of seeing the body as who we are, we saw it as simply a vehicle for experiencing life? When we stop clinging to the body as our defining essence, we open ourselves to something deeper, a sense of peace that is not dependent on physical form. So, ask yourself, am I living as if my body is my true self? Or am I beginning to see beyond it? Conclusion. What will you live for? The Buddha did not leave us with empty words, he left us with a path, a way to true liberation. But the question remains, what will you live for? Will you continue chasing illusions, seeking happiness in fleeting pleasures, material success, and external validation? Or will you dare to walk a different path, one that leads to true peace and freedom? Life is short, impermanent, and fragile. Everything we hold onto in this world is temporary. The wealth we accumulate, the relationships we cherish, the achievements we take pride in, all of them will one day fade away. Life itself is uncertain. We do not even know if we will wake up tomorrow. Yet, despite knowing this, most of us live as if we are immortal, postponing our search for meaning, delaying our pursuit of wisdom, and spending our days distracted by trivial concerns. But what if, instead of clinging to what will inevitably be lost, we learn to let go? The courage to let go. Letting go does not mean giving up on life. It means living fully, without unnecessary burdens. It means releasing the constant craving for more and instead finding contentment in the present moment. Imagine walking through life carrying a heavy backpack filled with worries, desires, and regrets. Every step is exhausting, but the moment you put it down, you feel lighter, freer, more alive. This is what the Buddha's path offers, not an escape from life, but a way to experience it without suffering. The answer is not outside, it is within. We often search for happiness outside ourselves, in achievements, relationships, and possessions. But true peace is not something to be found, it is something to be realized. It has always been within you, waiting to be uncovered in the stillness of your own being. So, the final question is not about what the Buddha taught, or what others believe. It is about you. What will you live for? Will you continue chasing the endless desires of the world? Or will you seek the wisdom that leads to true, unshakable happiness? The choice is yours.